We had discussed with our parents on the back to school night was about the partnership between the school and the home. And kind of along that same line, we'd like to kind of introduce the background or the need for this topic of the workshops that we're doing. And this year we planned for 4 workshop topics. This is the first one, and I think one that we would need to repeat every year, but look at different angles in connection with it. And before I kind of explain why we felt that this was an important topic to explore today, I wanted to share a little discussion that I had, and Sister Saba and I had with Sheikh Faizi a few weeks ago. And tongue-in-cheek, he used the word Wahhabi for the Montessori approach. Wahhabi, a very puritanical, religious movement, which, because he said that in the Montessori approach we don't have sugar, no chocolates, no stickers, no rewards, and all these things that kind of make a child's mouth water. And when we, and this is an impression, and this is something that I think many parents and adults might feel. So, and why is it not correct, or what's the context, or what's the purpose? Why is it that way? And I think that's the reason why we need to look at the philosophy. We need to understand what is the connection between these practices or these values and the bigger picture, the broader picture of human development, the purpose of human existence. How does this all fit into how we want our children to become? And so for that reason, Montessori philosophy, sometimes a scary word. Philosophy is somewhat abstract and can be theoretical and might seem way above the head, but I think it's very practical. Why would an educational philosophy deny children chocolates, sweets, and rewards? So with that in mind, we are going to explore Montessori philosophy with a very eminent Montessorian educator. And before I introduce her, I'll just summarize our program. We'll be spending about 45 minutes. Mrs. Anna Perry will present the elements of the philosophy, and then after that we'll take a 5-minute break so that we can get into 2 different breakout sessions. And we'll have the parents of primary children stay here, parents of elementary children go into the men's banquet hall next door, and have a follow-up discussion with the teachers present, the class teachers, the lead teachers, and also Anna Perry present, to take it further and hopefully open up the conversation more so that you can think about the implications of Montessori philosophy, because in the end philosophy is not just ideas, but it's about practices and outcomes. So with that context, I'd like to share a little bit about Anna Perry, which many of our staff know very well, but our parents' community would also benefit from knowing. So Anna Perry is the Executive Director of Seton Montessori Institute in Clarendon Hills, and she also oversees the operations of Seton Montessori School and the Montessori Children's House of North Barrington. She's an expert on Montessori education, school leadership, administration, child development, and Montessori philosophy. Her experience in this field includes several years teaching children from ages 3 to 6, not only here but also in New York State. She served as an adjunct faculty member at Erickson Institute and at the Elgin Community College, and she's a frequent speaker and author on topics ranging from environment preparation in the classroom, parent counseling, observation, documentation, school and camp administration, and Montessori leadership. And in terms of educational background, Anna Perry has credentials from the American Montessori Society in early childhood education, and also in Montessori school administration and education from Tufts University and from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So we're really fortunate. On a personal note, Anna Perry is a mentor to me personally in my coursework, and also Fatima Kanji. She has guided our school from the very beginning, and so we're deeply honored and privileged to have her address our parent community, and so I welcome her to address our parents.
Thank you, Manhaj. Hello. Assalamu alaikum. It is so nice to be here with you and to see this growing community coming together. I did visit at the very beginning of the school and saw when it was one classroom and looking to grow and bringing in a principal, and so to see how much has changed in so little time, it really speaks to the dedication and the commitment that all of you have had in building this school community together, and how nice to be here together this evening talking about a topic that I am very passionate about, and I love bringing these kinds of ideas and thoughts to communities, because so often when parents first come to a school, they come because their neighbor said it was nice, or they heard about it in their community, or not necessarily because it was a Montessori school. Some maybe, but most, the hours were good. Here they teach Arabic, I would like the context. You have many reasons that may have brought you, but now your child is in a Montessori school, and to better understand the approach that's being used will help you in your home setting, not create a school at home, because that's why you send them to school, but when you can make connections between home and school and help your child have that smooth transition, parenting gets easier too, and when we can make those parallels and connections. And so tonight we will talk about Montessori philosophy up here, but also in the practical sense. What are some things that we can be doing as educators, as parents, knowing that in the Montessori approach we firmly believe that the most important educator in any child's life is the parent. The parents are the ones who have the biggest and the lifelong impact on the child. So it's only through that partnership and that connection that we can really support every child who comes into a Montessori context. So you've heard a little bit about me. I thank you very much for the nice introduction, Minhaj. I have grown up in the Montessori community. Both of my parents are Montessori educators as well. So from very early on, I have been involved in this approach, and I have my own 2 children who are now teenagers, taller than me. One is in college, the other is in high school. So I've gotten to see Montessori from many different perspectives and have a full appreciation for what it can really do to help bring not only each child along, but to bring communities together and to help move our communities forward and bring different ways of seeing the world to the children who we are working with. So we'll talk about that. I would like to know a little bit more about those who are in the room, though. And so we'll do just a brief survey, if that's okay, with hands. How many are parents have a child who is less than 3 years old at home? Okay. There's a good number there. Maybe someday. A toddler program, parent-child. How many have a child in 3 to 6 age range? Okay. How many have a child in the 6 to 12 age range? Okay, good. More hands there. That's interesting. And how many have a child who is 12 and older, adolescent age? Okay. All right, we've covered all the children. Did anyone attend a Montessori school as a child? A few? Okay, that's great. Here or abroad? Abroad? Abroad, okay. All right, and how many came to this school because you were looking for a Montessori school? Anyone specifically? Okay, good. You never know. Some parent communities, it's everyone. Most parent communities, when I do these workshops for families, it's a small group because we come to this for many different reasons, but we're happy that you found Montessori at this school. Good, so we're going to talk through some of the basic ideas of them. Oh, my last question. How many of you, this is your first parent education event hosted by this school about Montessori? Okay. Good, welcome, we're glad you're here. We hope this is the first of many that you will attend. So one of the main tenets of Montessori, one of the main sayings of Maria Montessori was the founding educator of the Montessori approach. She was an Italian woman who was a unique soul, is really the best way to describe her. We're still talking and doing Montessori now, and this was an approach that started in 1907, so many years ago. We've already had over 100 years of Montessori education, and she was a woman in Italy who was academically oriented. As a girl, usually in those days, in the late 1800s, women's education finished at age 12 at the most. And she petitioned her parents to be able to continue her education. And so she had to go to an all-boys school. There was one other girl with her. And it was a science and engineering, math-oriented school. This became her interest. She fell in love with biology and decided to pursue medicine. She was one of the first women who ever became a medical doctor in Italy. And in order to be allowed even to go to that university to study medicine, there had to be politics involved because women were not allowed to do this. So we know just from that she was someone who really knew her mind and was an advocate. And what she discovered in this work was her passion was for working with children and for helping children to experience life in a new way. And her saying that is now famous around the world is follow the child. Not follow the child. You don't have to go after them, behind them. Sometimes parents today have misunderstood that, and there's so much about Montessori now online that tends to go a little bit too extreme in that. The follow the child idea is that the child will tell us with their actions, with their words, with their bodies, especially those young children. They tell us everything we need to know if we train ourselves to observe them. If we can see what they are telling us with their actions, then based on our observations, we know how to guide them, how we can adapt, how we can adjust what we're doing. This applies in the school context for sure. Every day we are observing our students in the classroom, we take notes, we track what they're doing. In the home setting, we're also every day with our children. If we can train ourselves to observe for some of those indicators and to support the aspects of their developing personalities, because they are who they are. They come to us already as beings who know themselves and who have all this potential. If we can help to understand what they're trying to tell us with their actions and with their words as their vocabularies grow, and now as they become capable elementary students, where their interests are taking them, how can we feed those interests and help them learn how they learn? That's the kind of following the child that we're talking about. Does that make sense? Okay. So Maria Montessori talked about 3 aspects that we want to consider for every child. Each child that we're thinking about, we want to think about who they are, what the child brings into that setting, because they come with their own biology. They come with parents or guardians of some sort. Every child everywhere comes from somewhere. So what is it, who are they from their own background, and what is their context? Do they have grandparents living at home? Do they have extended family? Is it one parent? Is it 2 parents? Is it, what is the context? Is it a religious family? Is it a not religiously practicing family? All of these different elements of the child's life impacts how they come into a new context, right? That's part of what they bring into a Montessori school or into any space that they go to. Now, in a Montessori context, we also think about the adult. Who is the adult? If right now, when we're talking with parents and teachers, we are the adult in this triangle, right? How is my influence on the child? What is my background? What's my preparation? And how can I support the child in a relationship, right? We're creating a relationship with the child. The first way that we do this, even before the child is born, when we are just waiting for that child to be born, we are preparing an environment. And the environment doesn't mean the jungles or we use the word environment in Montessori differently. We call any physical space is a prepared environment. So a prepared environment when the child is in utero is the prepared environment of the uterus, of that space. The prepared environment that we are creating in a classroom is the physical classroom, and it's also the emotional space, and it's also the social space that we're creating in our classrooms. Yes? In a home, we have a physical home environment that was not designed for young children. It was designed to the adult needs. And so in our home, our physical environment, sometimes we have to give a stool. I love the stool. I'm a short person, and having a stool in front is nice to have a space that lifts you up. Your children also benefit from a stool because we all started out small, and to have something that helps them reach where they need to get to makes a big difference for them. So what is the physical environment? What is the social environment? And the emotional environment in the space. Okay? So, the child. Maria Montessori said, "There is thus a secret in the soul of the child, impossible to penetrate unless they themselves reveals it as little by little they build up their being." They are creating themselves, and that is big work. Children are still in formation when they come to us in the world. They are in formation for many years. Some of us, we are still in formation of ourselves. But the young child is learning how to learn. They are learning how to think. They are learning how to talk, how to walk, how to do all those things. The experiences that they have in these early years will help them know how to be forever after. So what are those experiences we are providing for them? The prepared environment should be a safe space. It should be a beautiful space whenever possible. If we have a chance to impact that space, how do we make it a beautiful space? Every space I've walked through today since I've arrived at the school, there's an attention to the details. How do we make a hall a beautiful space for the adults who are coming in? How do we find comfortable chairs for the adults to sit on and a microphone so that things can be heard? Every attention to detail we try to make. In our homes, we pay attention to those details as well. Do we spend as much time thinking about how to make it attractive and appealing for the children too? In a Montessori sense, we trend towards creating realistic spaces for children, especially for younger children. Our society, Western society, has lots of imaginary play is the big emphasis. And in a Montessori context, what we see children gravitating towards is doing what big people do. Have you ever noticed this? If you're home and you're working on something and your child comes right up next to you and they want to do something that's just like you're doing, and if they're very young, they still don't have the skills yet, but they want to try, and that's how they learn. So we try to create opportunities for them to learn at their own level. We want it to be orderly, have natural elements, to be appropriate to their developmental level, and we really want to facilitate independence. It's one of the things that people remember about Montessori is the children come out so independent. But if we only emphasize independence, that I can do it myself, that a toddler always says, me, I do it, yes? We want interdependence as well. We want children to feel like they are connected to the others as well as able to do it themselves. And so that takes some work. That takes attention to those details. And then including the outdoors, connecting to the outdoors. And that prepared adult in the school, it's the educators. In the home, it's the parents, it's whichever other adults are coming into your home. But we, as adults who are paying attention to children, we want to create a peaceful space where I am modeling to my child that life is all about learning. Because this is where your child is at. They're in a phase where they can't not learn. They can't turn it off. We can sometimes space things out and not pay as much attention if it's not something we're interested in as adults. Right? If my husband developed a new interest, a new hobby, he will go and do that. I will make every effort not to learn too much so that he has his time. I can do my thing. He's aware of Montessori. We talk about Montessori, but that's my work, not his work. So we have our areas, but he thinks about it as a parent. So how do we model to our children that we are learning and support them in their own learning? We are observing. We see ourselves as scientists so that our children can see themselves as scientists. One of the most interesting things to say to a 4, 5, 6-year-old is, how did you figure that out? And they come back with such interesting thoughts. And then if you start saying this to a young child, then someday they will turn around to you when you do something interesting. How did you figure that out? And you'll have to think, how did I figure that out? What did I do? Let me break it down for them. So we're giving them the examples of how to be a human and how to be a good human. Yes? We want to be worthy of imitation. So the things that we do are more important than the words that we say. Because each child comes to us open. And who is it that we are showing them they could become? That's the example we're providing. And we want to be doing what is best for the child as much as possible. That's our focus, is in helping them build themselves. So Montessori had some interesting terms about that self-construction. One aspect that she invites adults working with children, whether they are there as parents or as educators, to consider is that we are only really touching the very periphery of who this child is, the outsides. And what's inside is what we have to acknowledge is there from the start. From the moment of conception, they exist. And as they come into the world, that spirit, that soul, who they are, it continues. And it gets shaped by the experiences and the environment that they come into. So how do we help recognize this child first and foremost as themselves, and then bring them along on this journey we call life? Maria Montessori had a term for the new child who just has been born. She recognizes that this child is a spiritual embryo, that this is a child who is so new in the world that they are still needing protection and covering is the word that comes to mind, but it's more than that we are here to support them because that pregnancy experience continues for that first part of their journey, and they are still in such formation and so open. So the experiences that they have, the comfort that we can provide, and the nurturing that we can provide to those newest in our community is most important at this age, because then it stays with them. Children who have calm and supportive experiences in these earliest days and months and years, they know themselves. They become healthy humans. And when they have hard experiences early on, we have much more risk of many more challenges. And this is observations that Maria Montessori had years ago that now has been verified time and again by science, has helped bring things along. The other aspect of Montessori's idea of how the child is building themselves that I wanted to share with you tonight is this idea of normalization. And normalization is a term that it sounds much better in Italian. Normalizzazione makes sense in Italian in a way that it doesn't make sense in English. I had a parent once come up to me saying, "You're going to normalize my child? You're going to do what to my child?" We don't do this to the child, okay? It's not something that we're going to do to anyone. But it is a process that we want to see unfold for every child. So what Maria Montessori meant by this idea of normalization is that we are cultivating 4 characteristics: concentration, enjoyment of work, self-discipline, and sociability. And when you observe a Montessori class in action, you might see some newer children or some children who are still figuring things out. But you will also see some children who are fully focused, who have found their groove, who have found purpose, and they are throwing themselves into it. Maria Montessori said the child becomes a person through work, not work in the adult concept of work, but meaningful work, purposeful work, activities that help them build themselves. And so when we can help support the young child in learning how to concentrate, we give them, it's like a secret ability. And our society and Western culture does not say, let them concentrate. It says, interrupt them all the time and tell them what a good job they're doing. Not in a Montessori setting. We want to put our hands behind our back and tiptoe away if they're fully engaged in something productive. Enjoyment of work. Have you seen your child doing something that they really got into, that they're really enjoying just for the work's sake? This is something where they're not being entertained, but they're being invited to do something that is purposeful to them. In a Montessori classroom, the first places that we see this, and very often in the home, is around daily tasks, home care kinds of activities. In our classrooms, we call it practical life. Have you ever seen your child be interested in doing things around the house like they might have seen adults doing in their spaces? If you have been dusting, they want to grab a cloth and dust. If you have been cooking, they want to come and help in the kitchen, right? If you've been sweeping, they want to get the broom. And that very often are those first experiences in purposeful work. That's setting the stage for that in these different capacities. Self-discipline, understanding that I am my own person and I can control myself in the world. And that I'm my own person, but there's all these other people around me. I can be sociable in positive ways. These are all ways that Montessori saw children coming together and kind of building themselves, figuring themselves out. So in the early childhood classroom, we give them many opportunities to do purposeful work. In our homes, we encourage you to look around in your spaces, especially the spaces where your children spend the most time, to think about how can I invite them to do something purposeful here? What are they telling me they're interested in? And how can I invite them to do something new? One of the challenges we have now with young children is that there's so many other ways to entertain them, and sometimes we end up with the bad habits where they just, does your community struggle with this too? Every doctor's office I see, every restaurant, this is entertainment, not engagement. So how do we move away from having this be, we're the adults here, we're bigger than them, and this is our device. If it gets put away and it's not something being offered, then what will we do with them? We need some ideas for purposeful work, because that's what helps your child really know who they are. This, entertainment, useful in very specific situations, but should not be the main way we spend time together. Okay? Questions about this? What kinds of activities have you seen your child being really engaged in at home? What kinds of things do they do that you see them showing signs of normalization, one of these traits of normalization? Legos, that's a great example. Building. What else? Yeah. Does he play the teacher or himself? Aha, that's interesting. See, but that tells you something about how he's thinking about it. That's great. That's lovely. Other examples? What do you see them enjoying? The dishwasher. Loading? Unloading? Anything with the dishwasher. It doesn't last. So keep that going as long as you can. And even when they're not as interested anymore, it still just becomes regular family practice that now is the time when we load the dishes. Right? But when your children are younger is when this big interest in this work of the home exists. And then eventually they get older and they want to go and do other things. And we have to remind them again, remember, it's your turn to load the dishwasher, don't forget. But that's happy and healthy because they know how. Any other examples? What your children do at home? Folding laundry. Again, one of those things that they revel in. That it doesn't last, but it's great. Honestly, that's, and as adults, are there things that you find? So normalization in adults has been compared to a theory that was outlined years ago called flow theory. The guy who outlined it, his name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He's Armenian. He passed away a few years ago. But he talks about how his best examples are around household work, where we lose ourselves in time, or around our work-related activities that we get really engaged in, or athletic feats. Sometimes that's your work. For most of us, it's our hobby, or something we enjoy doing. So runners, when they're running and you kind of lose time in the physicality of it, you get the rhythm, and then time just kind of floats away. In the home, there might be folding laundry for some. For my husband, it's ironing. Yes. He loves to iron, and so he can do the ironing for hours. For me, it's washing dishes, but it's a specific time of washing dishes, not when I have to go and do 5 other things. It's at the end of the night. The children have gone to sleep, the guests have left, and I'm left with dishes to wash and soapy water. I could be there for hours. No one bothers me because I'm doing the dishes. It's just, that's like my happy place where I could, perfect, life is good. But each of us has some area that's like that in our lives. Sometimes it's tidying. The tidying process can be therapeutically calming for some people. If they get nervous, they start tidying. I had a roommate like that once. So I come home, the apartment was clean. I'm like, what's wrong? Something's wrong. So how do we in our own lives? Does anyone have any other examples that come to you?
Where does reading fit in, especially when is it more like, can it become like entertainment, or is it work?
So it's engagement. What's the question is, are we being entertained or engaged? And reading isn't quite full flow because there's always an entertainment purpose to it. Or an educational purpose to it, right? If I'm reading for my work or for learning purposes, It's not content that is entertaining to me in the same way, but there's an entertainment factor that's built in there. Same with watching TV. Is just straight intake. There needs to be some give and take, right? A great example that Csikszentmihalyi used for adults was, this was back in the day, but he used Michael Jordan as the example. When Michael Jordan is playing basketball and he's going up for a layup and he's dunking a basketball, his tongue is out, his leg, and he's going down for it. He's not thinking step, jump, now. He doesn't have to think through any of that. It happens without thought, right? And he's not paying attention to time. He listens to the buzzer and it calls him out of he's in the zone, right? That's what he's talking about, that kind of feeling that all of us find in our lives in different ways. I had an accountant who was in the room once when I talked about this, and she said, for me it's spreadsheets. Like, thank goodness for spreadsheets being your thing. It's not my thing, but it's good that it's somebody's thing. She wanted to find a spreadsheet that had one error in it, a very big spreadsheet, and to find that error was her passion. Like, then you really found the right profession, because that's sometimes what accountants have to do. Okay. So think about what makes your child hum. When you go home tonight, you're going to see your child with new eyes. You can tell them tomorrow. Hopefully they're asleep when you go home. Well, you have older children too, so some will still be up. But tell them, I went to your school for a meeting tonight, and I learned some new things, new ideas. It's fun. And then they take their school a little bit more seriously. We're also creating a connection for them between this idea that my parents value my school enough that they came here on a Wednesday night, right? Another Montessori concept I wanted to bring to you is this idea that she had of sensitive periods. These are times in a young child's life when they are most open to learning specific skills. And your children are going through these sensitive periods as we talk. This is what their lives are not intentional, but their bodies are programmed to learn specific skills and tasks and concepts at different times in their lives. So it's a time-limited experience. It doesn't mean they can't learn a skill if they missed that sensitive period, but it won't be as easy for them to learn if it's after that time frame. It happens once. Sensitive periods aren't something that happen and then go away and then come back again. It's just now is a sensitive period. One of my favorite examples of sensitive periods is a sensitive period for small objects, which I think every parent who has had a 1-year-old has realized that your child is fascinated right at this stage when the pediatrician says, don't let them play with small things. They are fascinated by small things. It's normal. It's natural. It's something that their whole body and brain is telling them. You know, we took a group to the zoo once, and right in front of the zoo, the big cooler, the Gatorade cooler, fell over, and it had lemonade or something in it, and all the ants came to see the cooler, the lemonade that was on the ground. And all the groups went in, and there was a group of 3 to 6-year-old children with one of the parents who got stuck there. And she's like, I'm sorry, I tried to get them go, but they want to watch the ants. I said, well, it counts. It's an animal of some sort. We're at the zoo. This kind of fits. But I think because they were very young and they loved the smallness of the ants. And that became a whole fascination. And that classroom had to have an ant farm and talk about ants. So, when they get really stuck on something like this, they want to spend lots of time doing it, and it does not lead to exhaustion. It leads to like this exhilaration feel, like, I figured it out. Have you ever seen that moment in your child where the light bulb, you can almost see the light bulb over their heads? I got it. Or this was so exciting, so fulfilling to do. It's an intense interest that makes them ignore other activities. Come on over here. No, I'm really into this. Hold on. They work hard of their own volition, not because someone told them to. They come back to it again and again. and they want to repeat those activities while they're in this phase. So this is one of the nicest images of just an outline on the timeline of these sensitive periods. Sensory refinement, the awareness of our senses. Your children's senses are much more in tune right now than yours are. That's why sometimes young children say, "It hurts my ears." They are feeling their senses in ways that we as adults no longer can do. Does that make sense? So sensory refinement, what they need is the vocabulary. You see a child who's fascinated by something that they're experiencing sensorially, it feels smooth, or it feels rough. It feels smooth, it feels rough. We're giving the vocabulary to young children. We're giving them the gradients of the vocabulary for it. Language, we know from the moment that they are with us, they are paying attention to the words we say and how we say them. Children babble differently depending on the languages that they've heard. If they've heard only one language, then it's only those sounds that are the ones that stick. They babble in all different languages until around 4 months. And then they start refining to the language that they're hearing the most, usually the language of home. How much can we expose them to in these times when they're so open? This is when we can give them so much. They get vocabulary without having to study. If we were to try and learn new languages now, it would take real work. But you put a young child in a classroom where a new language is being exposed, or in a community where they have new language being shared, they get it without thinking about it. Before the age of 6 is the ideal time to introduce new languages. And they can learn multiple languages at one time, as your school is demonstrating very nicely. We worked with a school in Slovenia where all the children automatically had 3 languages introduced in class, and then an optional 4th and 5th language. Slovenia is a very small country surrounded by other countries that speak other languages. And so this is a survival skill, but it's also proof that the child's brain, it's not that their brains are different. These are children. They all have that capacity, but they don't get the exposure that these children were able to get. Movement. Your child wants to move. Our culture, Western culture says restrain them. And really, we want to provide opportunities for movement and purposeful movement. We want to give them the chance to learn how their bodies work. And that birth to 3, they are such high energy. There's so much movement. It takes energy on the part of the parents. All of you who have children under 3 at home, I get it. It does get easier, but it's the time of active movement all the time. Small objects, we talked about order. Your youngest children are the ones who are sensitive to order. Have you ever put something away in one place that used to go over here, and then you find it over there again because your 18-month-old moved it back to where it was before? This is in them. It's not something they're doing to you. They're just doing it because that's what they're called to do. But it's biology, right? Toileting, they start becoming aware of that ability around 18 months. Some children even earlier. In Western culture, Huggies will sell you diapers until your child is 5. We can do some things to help resolve that. So grace and courtesy, paying attention to how we greet others, how they greet us, how the ways of moving in our society. Writing and reading show up. 3, 4, 5 is when children are most open and paying attention to what we're doing. And again, in our conventional schools, we don't really think about introducing these things until 5 is when we start usually. We can start with introductions earlier. And Montessori has a really lovely way of laying it out. And then math, the cognitive capacity for mathematical understanding really blossoms around age 4. Okay, I'm running out of time. 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. We're going to skip planes of development and go ahead to talk about. So, Planes of development. I will send Minhaj the slide. This is a way that Montessori outlined thinking about growth and development from birth through age 24. And birth to age 6 is one plane of development. 6 to 12 is another plane of development. That's why we see birth to 6, those children can really have lovely experiences, but they're very different than that elementary child's abilities. Adolescence is a whole other side. Maturity, we can talk about that another time. So some basic concepts of Montessori are respect. And this is one that I hope is a more and more value in our society as well. But it's one that is absolutely required in a Montessori classroom, is that I am respectful of myself, of others, and of the world around me. Fundamental. Should be fundamental in our homes as well. It means that we must be respectful with our children in the way that we expect them to be respectful with us. We're the adults, they're the child, there are some differences, but it's that fundamental underlying idea that I see you as your own human. You are here, you have value, and I respect you. From the moment they are here with us, we give them respect. Independence and interdependence is a place where in the school and in the home, we have so much that we can be doing to support this development. So in both school and home, we can offer choice. Once a child can talk, and even before they can talk, once they can stand up and walk around, they're making choices. What would you like to wear? This or this? It doesn't have to be what's in your closet, what would you like to wear, but what would you like to wear? This or this while they're very young. As they get older, we give limited choices that then they can choose from. Depending on the child, some like more, some like less. When there's something they have to do, we could make them do it with force, or we could say, would you like to do it by yourself, or would you like my help to do it? Or would you like to do it now or in 15 minutes? It looks like you might need a break. Do you need 15 minutes first and then you can take on this task? The dishes, whatever it is. If there isn't a choice, don't offer one. Do you want to do this? Don't say that if it's not a choice. If they say no, what are you going to do? That's an honest answer. They don't want to do it. What's next, right? So in our classrooms, we have the same age group all the time. It makes it a little easier. The parents have to continue to adapt to the growing capacity, intellectual and physical capacity of your child. So this is different work in the home setting than it is in the school setting. And we also want our child to recognize that they themselves can do hard things. You know what the biggest interrupter to that is these days? Adults who are overly helpful. When I'm with young children and I want to make myself be less helpful, I'll put a Band-Aid on my finger. And if they ask me to do anything, can you write this note? I'm sorry, I hurt my finger. It's your turn to write the note. My finger is hurt. If this is something that you struggle with, the Band-Aid can be your reminder that I am not going to help you because I hurt my finger. However that makes sense for you. We need to be less helpful so that they can show their capacity. If we do it for them, maybe they needed it 6 months ago, but now they're a little bigger. I think you can do this yourself. I need to be busy over here. What can you do? Okay? At the same time as independence we're emphasizing, we want children to recognize that they are part of a community. In your home, they are part of your family community. Right? In school, we have a classroom community and then the broader school community. And so we're always making those relationships between what I do impacts someone else. One of the most beautiful things in our mixed age classrooms that can happen is a younger child is struggling with something and a teacher doesn't necessarily go to help. but we'll watch to see which of the older children will come by to help. And it almost always happens. It's one of my favorite things is when something spills in an elementary classroom. I was in a classroom once. We call it test tube division. Little test tubes full of tiny little beads of different colors that children use to learn how to do more complex division activities. And I'm observing in a classroom, and the test tube tray tips over, and you have hundreds of beads go all over the wooden floor, and they spread everywhere. And the teacher looked up, made eye contact with one or two children, and very quickly there were 4 or 5 children who naturally came to help this poor young child figure out, who looked like they were about to cry, until all these children came to help. That's what we're trying to create. So when something spills in the home, the same idea. This is big work. Is there someone who can help me? Can you come help me? Asking for help. I'll get the dustpan, you get the broom. What can they do? What do they know how to do? From as soon as they know what the words are, we can be asking them to help. Right? As long as it fits within safety parameters. How do we get them realizing that they have a chance to impact the lives of others? We create the opportunities if they don't already exist. And we also celebrate how much easier it was to do when we all worked together. To wash the car together. That's a fun activity. Right now we're in the last times of this year that we'll be able to do something like that outside. The youngest child washes the tire. That's what they can reach. The older child can reach up high, they can wash the car together. But together we can get something cleaned up. Good. Does this make sense? Okay. So this will be our discussion topic. Independence and interdependence. We're going to, yes, timing, we have like 20 minutes to talk in groups. Okay. Teachers, if you can first share, because you're going to break into 3 to 6 and elementary. So 3 to 6, what are the ways that you see independence and interdependence happening within your classrooms? What are the things that you've seen their children doing independently and interdependently? And then parents, I invite you to share some ideas of what you have seen and maybe what you could be doing at home to better support their independence and interdependence in the home setting. Does that make sense as a discussion topic? Any questions before we break? Okay.
Okay, so we will take up this topic as Anna has described. As I said again, the primary parents and those participants who have an interest in the primary, or you have children in the primary, if you could stay in this area, and those who have children or a strong interest in the elementary age group, you can go next door to the men's area, and the teachers can take I'll set up 3 chairs here for our teachers to be in the front, and in that room it's already set up that way. And if you all could please kind of efficiently grab your chai and your snacks and move there and eat while you're talking. Please, I know that we would like to now socialize, but just pick it up and go to that area and then channel the socializing to the conversation. Okay, you have exactly 4 minutes. Okay, parents, could I ask you to move into the respective session rooms? Mrs. Shaheen, Ms. Fatima are seated in the front, and please come close to the front of the room if you could. Elementary on the men's side, men's banquet hall, and the primary in the ladies' banquet hall. Okay, inshallah we'll begin in 1 minute, so please move and take your seats. Okay, inshallah, I think we're ready to begin, and so I would invite Sister Saba in the elementary area to moderate. Anna Perry will also come in between the two rooms, and Sister Shaheen will be moderating in the primary class, in the primary area. So inshallah, please go ahead and begin. Thank you so much.